Frank Sinatra secretly hated Marlon Brando and tried to ruin him. Frank Sinatra, the voice, the legend, the chairman of the board. Marlon Brando, the brooding genius, the method actor, the rebel. Two titans of entertainment whose paths crossed during Hollywood's golden age. But behind the scenes of one of the most celebrated movie musicals of all time, simmered a rivalry so intense, so personal, that it would span decades and nearly destroy careers. What you're about to hear isn't just Hollywood gossip. This is the documented story of how America's most powerful entertainer waged a secret campaign to derail the career of the man many consider the greatest actor of his generation. The hatred ran so deep that Sinatra reportedly put out actual mob hits on Brando, and that's just where this story begins. Now, you won't find this tale prominently featured in sanitized Hollywood retrospectives. Studio publicity departments worked overtime to keep these explosive conflicts under wraps, but once you understand what really happened between these two legends, you'll never watch their performances the same way again. How did a professional rivalry transform into a personal vendetta that would echo through Hollywood for decades? The answer begins on the set of a film that would make history, but almost didn't get made at all. The Guys and Dolls Powder Keg. The year was 1955. Frank Sinatra was at the height of his career renaissance. His Oscar-winning performance in From Here to Eternity had catapulted him back to the top after a career slump. He was now the undisputed king of entertainment. Records, movies, television, nightclubs, Sinatra dominated them all. When he signed on to star in the film adaptation of the Broadway smash Guys and Dolls, it seemed like another guaranteed triumph. But then came the casting announcement that would change everything. Marlon Brando would play Sky Masterson, the role Sinatra desperately wanted for himself. Let's not pretend this was just a minor casting disappointment. This was a public humiliation for Sinatra. Here was Brando, a serious dramatic actor with no musical experience, being handed the romantic lead in one of the biggest musical productions of the decade, while Sinatra was relegated to the secondary role of Nathan Detroit. The studio's reasoning was simple but devastating to Sinatra's ego. Brando was the bigger box office draw. After The Wild One and his Oscar-winning turn in On the Waterfront, Brando was Hollywood's hottest property. At 30, he was also significantly younger than the 39-year-old Sinatra, a fact that didn't escape the crooner's notice. From the very first day on set, the tension was palpable. According to multiple crew members, Sinatra immediately began referring to Brando as Mumbles behind his back, a mocking reference to Brando's method acting technique and distinctive speech pattern. But this wasn't just professional jealousy, it was the beginning of a deeply personal hatred that would escalate in ways no one could have predicted. The on-set warfare. The Guys and Dolls set quickly became a battleground. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz found himself not just making a movie, but refereeing a cold war between his two stars. Sinatra, known for nailing scenes in a single take, would deliberately leave the set immediately after finishing his shots, refusing to stick around for Brando's coverage, a serious breach of professional etiquette that made editing scenes together extraordinarily difficult. Brando, meanwhile, was struggling with the musical elements of the role. While he worked tirelessly with voice coaches, often requesting dozens of takes to get a song right, Sinatra would stand off camera, rolling his eyes and making cutting remarks about actors who think they can sing. During one particularly difficult recording session, Sinatra allegedly told the orchestra, "Why don't we just give the kid one more take and let him get it over with, because he'll never be able to do it." But here's where the conflict took a darker turn. Brando, aware of Sinatra's mockery, began deliberately antagonizing the singer. According to production assistants, he would intentionally flub takes when Sinatra was at his best, forcing the one-take wonder to repeat scenes over and over. For a performer like Sinatra, who prided himself on spontaneity and hated rehearsals, this was torture. The breaking point came during filming of the Havana sequence. Brando was struggling with a complex dance number, requiring multiple retakes. Sinatra, who had been waiting hours for his scene, loudly announced to the entire set, "How many times can you hear action and cut before you go nuts? I'm leaving. When you're ready to shoot, I'll be in my dressing room." As he stormed off, Brando called after him, "Don't worry, Frank. We can always dub your voice if we need to." For Sinatra, the most celebrated voice in America, this was an unforgivable insult. According to multiple witnesses, Sinatra turned, pointed at Brando, and said, "You're dead to me, kid." He played the remainder of his scenes without once making eye contact with Brando off camera. So far, we've seen how a professional rivalry ignited on the Guys and Dolls set. But what happened next reveals just how far Sinatra was willing to go to sabotage Brando. And it involves one of the most talked about roles in Hollywood history, the Godfather sabotage. Fast forward to 1972. Marlon Brando's career was in serious trouble. After a string of box office failures in the 1960s, he was considered a has-been, a difficult actor no longer worth the trouble. Meanwhile, Sinatra had transformed himself into an entertainment empire, with his Rat Pack connections extending into business, politics, and, as many have documented, organized crime. When Francis Ford Coppola began casting The Godfather, Brando's name was suggested for the title role of Vito Corleone. The studio executives at Paramount were adamantly opposed. Brando was box office poison, too young for the role, and notoriously difficult. What many don't realize is that behind the scenes, according to multiple Paramount insiders, Sinatra was actively lobbying against Brando's casting. Why would Sinatra care about a role he wasn't even in contention for? Because The Godfather struck incredibly close to home. The character of Johnny Fontaine, the struggling singer who gets a career-saving movie role after his godfather makes a studio head an offer he can't refuse, was widely understood to be based on Sinatra's own career resurrection and alleged mob connections. Sinatra was furious about the character, even threatening author Mario Puzo at Chasen's restaurant in 1970, reportedly shouting, "I'll beat the hell out of you. You know I'm not a gangster." The idea that Brando, the man he despised, might play the Godfather character in the film adaptation was too much for Sinatra to bear. According to Coppola's own accounts, Paramount executives repeatedly cited concerns from powerful industry figures about Brando's casting, a thinly veiled reference to Sinatra's influence campaign. They demanded Coppola audition dozens of other actors, hoping he would give up on Brando. But here's where Brando got his revenge. Despite Sinatra's behind-the-scenes maneuvering, Coppola insisted on Brando, even threatening to quit the production. When Brando finally won the role, he crafted a performance that not only revitalized his career, but became one of the most iconic in cinema history, winning him his second Oscar, which he famously declined. The success of The Godfather and Brando's triumphant comeback was a bitter pill for Sinatra, one that would escalate their feud to truly dangerous levels. The mob connections turned threatening. What makes the Sinatra-Brando feud particularly chilling is how it extended beyond Hollywood and into the realm of organized crime. While many celebrity feuds involve harsh words and career sabotage, this one allegedly included actual threats of violence. By the mid-1970s, Sinatra's connections to organized crime figures were an open secret in Hollywood. His friendship with Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana and other underworld figures had been documented by law enforcement for decades. According to multiple accounts, including those from Brando's inner circle, Sinatra began using these connections to intimidate the actor. Following the success of The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris, Brando was back on top in Hollywood, a resurrection that reportedly infuriated Sinatra. According to Brando's friend and Godfather co-star James Caan, Brando began receiving threatening phone calls that he attributed to Sinatra's mob connections. While filming Missouri Breaks in 1976, Brando reportedly hired additional security because of concerns about Sinatra-connected threats. The situation became so serious that director Francis Ford Coppola, preparing to work with Brando again on Apocalypse Now, was warned by studio executives about potential disruptions to the production if Brando was involved, a thinly veiled reference to Sinatra's influence and threats. Brando himself addressed these threats obliquely in interviews, once telling a reporter, "There are certain people in this town who don't act directly. They have others do their dirty work while they maintain their clean image." While he never named Sinatra explicitly, those in Hollywood circles understood exactly who he meant. The intimidation campaign reportedly extended to other actors who worked with Brando. After co-starring with him in The Missouri Breaks, Jack Nicholson was allegedly warned by Sinatra at a party, "You're keeping dangerous company, kid." When Nicholson looked confused, Sinatra elaborated, "Brando, he's not someone you want to be associated with if you plan to have a long career." Even legendary director Elia Kazan, who launched Brando to stardom in A Streetcar Named Desire, reported receiving a strange call after planning a new project with Brando in the late 1970s. The caller simply said, "The chairman doesn't approve of this casting," before hanging up. The secret audio tape that changed everything. In 1979, the feud took an unexpected turn when a bombshell private recording surfaced among Hollywood insiders. During a private party at his Palm Springs home, Sinatra, not realizing he was being recorded, went on a 5-minute tirade about Brando, calling him a no-talent punk who got lucky, and boasting that he had friends who could ensure Brando never works again. When informed about the tape's existence, Brando made a surprising move. Rather than using it against Sinatra, he arranged through intermediaries to let Sinatra know of its existence, essentially creating a mutually assured destruction scenario. According to those close to both men, this standoff led to an uneasy truce that would last several years. The tape, which has never been publicly released, but has been confirmed by multiple sources who heard it, reportedly includes Sinatra making explicit threats against Brando's career and even references to physical harm, material that would have been devastating to Sinatra's carefully maintained public image. By the early 1980s, both men had reached a point in their careers where their legendary status was secured. The active campaign against each other cooled, though they continued to avoid each other at industry events. When they unexpectedly found themselves at the same Academy Awards ceremony in 1982, witnesses reported that Sinatra deliberately changed his seating to avoid being photographed near Brando. The most shocking chapter in the Sinatra-Brando feud came in 1991, when they found themselves face-to-face for the first time in nearly 2 decades. The occasion was a benefit for children's charities at New York's Waldorf Astoria, an event neither could politely decline due to their connections to the organizers. According to multiple witnesses, including actor Alan Alda, when Sinatra spotted Brando across the room, he turned to leave. Brando, however, did something unexpected. He approached Sinatra directly, extending his hand. What followed was a tense, hushed conversation that lasted less than 2 minutes, but left onlookers stunned. Sinatra, visibly uncomfortable, accepted the handshake, but barely spoke. Brando, by contrast, appeared to be doing most of the talking, leaning in close to Sinatra's ear at one point. When they separated, Sinatra immediately left the event, canceling his scheduled performance. Brando remained, but refused to discuss what had transpired. Years later, in one of his final interviews, Brando offered a cryptic comment about the encounter. "I told him the truth finally. Some men can't handle that, especially men who've created their own mythology." What truth did Brando share? According to one Sinatra confidant who requested anonymity, Brando informed Sinatra that he had preserved evidence of the threats made against him, including names, dates, and recordings, with instructions for their release in the event of any suspicious harm befalling him. It was, essentially, a final checkmate in their decades-long power struggle. Final resolution, legacy, and reconciliation. In their final years, both men seemed to make peace with their rivalry, if not with each other. Sinatra, in a 1993 interview, made his only public acknowledgement of the feud, saying simply, "Some people aren't meant to get along. That doesn't mean you can't respect their talents." Brando, always more forthcoming, addressed the conflict more directly in his 1994 autobiography, Songs My Mother Taught Me. While he praised Sinatra's musical abilities as once in a century, he also wrote, "Frank built a castle of celebrity, but lived in fear of anyone who might reveal what lay beneath the foundation." When Sinatra died in 1998, Brando, breaking with his usual practice of avoiding public statements about celebrity deaths, issued a brief but telling statement, "America has lost a voice, but some stories remain unsung." What's particularly fascinating about this feud is how it remained largely beneath the surface for decades. While other Hollywood rivalries played out in gossip columns and public snubs, Sinatra and Brando conducted their war largely through proxies and behind closed doors. The full extent of their conflict only began to emerge years after both had passed from the scene. For Hollywood historians, the Sinatra-Brando feud represents a clash not just of personalities, but of eras and approaches to fame. Sinatra, the self-made entertainment juggernaut who conquered every medium through force of personality and connections. Brando, the introspective artist who rejected the star-making machinery and challenged the very nature of celebrity. Their collision was perhaps inevitable and inevitably explosive. Their rivalry wasn't just about two oversized egos. It was about two fundamentally different visions of what it meant to be a star in America. Sinatra, who built his empire on charm, connections, and a carefully cultivated public image. Brando, who dismantled the very idea of stardom, exposing its artifice while creating an entirely new approach to acting that still influences performers today. They never became friends. They never truly made peace. but in their mutual animosity, they pushed each other to heights they might never have reached otherwise. Sinatra's determination to outshine Brando led to some of his most committed performances. Brando's resistance to Sinatra's type of celebrity forced him to create something entirely new. Their feud reminds us that behind Hollywood's carefully constructed image of glamour and camaraderie often lies something far more complex and human: ambition, jealousy, and the ruthless pursuit of legacy. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into one of Hollywood's most fascinating hidden rivalries, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations of cinema's golden age. What other Hollywood feuds would you like us to investigate? The legendary tension between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, the Cold War between John Wayne and Montgomery Clift? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, in Hollywood, what you see on screen is only half the story. The real drama often unfolds when the cameras stop rolling. Some say that in his final years, Sinatra kept a photograph of Brando in his private study, not out of reconciliation, but as a reminder of the one man he couldn't control. The truth behind that rumor, however, is a story for another day.